All right, so welcome everyone to the January research seminar for the IGRI. My name is Devor Mondam. I am the coordinator for the IGRI as well as for the Center for Policy Design and Governance at Syracuse University. Before I introduce our presenter and turn things over to her, just wanted to give you guys a quick announcement. It is 2023, it's the start of a new year, and with that, we are going to start promoting the three major events that we have on our calendar. So those would be the annual 7-week institutional analysis training, the doctoral student workshop, and the third annual virtual conference. If you are on the IGRI listserv, earlier today I sent out the links for those event pages that are on the IGRI website now. So, and even if you aren't on the listserv, you can go to the IGRI website right now and you can find the information about all of those events. They're right on the homepage under upcoming events. And so you can get all the details about the dates, deadlines, the links to register and apply, the requirements, and so on and so forth. So all of that information is available. And of course, if you have any questions about that, feel free to email me and I can answer any of those. So yeah, so you can see that stuff on there. We'll be doing some push on the IGRI social media account, so you'll see some information there as well. So just wanted to give you a heads up that that stuff is in the wings. It is forthcoming. So if you're interested in any of those, you have the opportunity starting now to look at those, to start thinking about them, to apply for them, and so on. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there for anyone who is interested. So now, moving on to the main event, which is our research seminar and our speaker. I want to introduce her. I want to introduce Marta Avila. So Marta Avila is an informatics lecturer at the College of Emergency Preparedness, Homeland Security, and Cybersecurity at the University at Albany. Marta holds a BA in law with a tax law specialization from Universidad de la América Puebla, Mexico, and a master in IT law and legal informatics from the University of Bologna, Italy. She is currently pursuing a PhD in information science at UAlbany. Her research interests are digital government, legal informatics, and information sharing. And her presentation today is entitled "The Process of Transforming Regulatory Provisions into Specifications for Information Systems." Marta, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Great. Well, thank you so much for having me here. For me, it's kind of daunting to present in front of this audience, now that you are experts. But at the same time, I am seeing this like a great opportunity for asking for your feedback, questions that can make me see the windows for the opportunity window in the project, suggestion, any kind of comments welcome. And I want that this topic will be my dissertation topic. Something that everybody said is that our research question depends on that the methodology that we are going to use depends on the research question. In my case, it's exactly the opposite. My research question has to be something that is perfectly suitable with institutional grammar. That is the methodology or the conceptual framework that I want to explore as part of my tools. Then all the questions are completely welcome at any time. Just let me know. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to discreetly kind of slip that into the chat rather than
No,
interrupting
no,
them.
no,
But
it's perfect. Thank you.
okay.
I did it again. I'm sorry. Okay, perfect. Then the content of this presentation is my motivation for this research. To present one is the problem and the research problem, to give you an overview of the conceptual framework, to present my methodology, to present how I am planning to use institutional grammar to point O, and how to use the institutional analysis and development framework for answering to my research questions. Okay.
Martha, I'm sorry to interrupt you again. I think it's, at least on my screen, I think maybe I'm seeing it's not in presentation mode.
Okay, let me.
It's like the slides you view when you give a presentation. But
Exactly.
yeah, sorry about that.
Yes, I am trying to, let me check.
If it's too much trouble, you can keep it as is.
Begging apart, stop sharing and stop sharing, put in the presentation mode, and after that you share the screen again.
Got it.
I have the trouble with my students all the time. So
yes, the problem is that when I put this presentation mode, I cannot see the option to share the screen, like the Zoom disappears.
presentation mode, so you can the start button in your keyboard, and you can find the Zoom again and share again.
Okay, let's check. So that's about it. Share the screen. No, I think that you're seeing exactly the same.
Never mind. You can just show it in your PowerPoint outside.
Yes, I'm so sorry. What is this happening? Share window is closed. Share window. One second. I'm going to try another thing, and that's it.
Martha, are you using multiple screens? Sometimes when you have multiple screens, it goes that way. So
okay, then I'm going to Yes, I cannot even think without multiple screens. And Professor transforming, share.
You can just carry on with it like this. Yeah,
okay.
Make it easier.
So about my motivation, I was working can you see me? No. Can you see my presentation? No.
Yeah, we can see you, but not your presentation.
You can see the presentation?
Not the presentation, just you.
Okay. Oh, something happened. Share. Now? Yes. now you can see the presentation.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Then and part of my experience was related to drafting regulation, and that helped me to understand that it's very important to hear, to listen carefully the stakeholders, to understand the motivations for doing the things that they are doing, or to trying to intervene reality or the real world with one specifications. And also that it's important to have an holistic view of the system that is necessary to intervene. Another thing that always resonates with me is the need to avoid the opacity of the law. Then to make the law and not only the text but also the process more transparent. And now that I am in this field of information science, also the opacity that there is in the information systems that very frequently work like a black box where we don't know what is happening there, and we just need to accept the results of the process. Another part of my interest is the information sharing, and with that, the quality of the data that is being shared. And this is because a lot of decisions that governments or any organizations have to make depend of the quality of the information that they are handling. And finally, another part of my interest, I worked for some years in this field, in a related field, the child welfare system. Okay, then we have that there is a problem in the real world, that is that governments release rules that guide organization in achieving goals. Well, that is not a problem. That is what's happening. Governments release rules to guide organization in achieving goals. The problem or the opportunity that the government has is that every time they rely more in information systems. These information systems are very effective to execute or to impede actions, and that exercise of executing or impede actions should help governments to comply with the strategies, the policies, or the regulation that they want to implement. The problem is that this the text, the rules are written in natural language, that they are not necessarily suited to be translated into specifications for information systems. Sometimes you cannot even create a direct translation, but to state a set of instructions now that are going to help to comply or help to implement that rule. And the other problem is that there is a very opaque process. Another problem that we have is that even with all this complexity, we still consider the outcomes of the information systems as a single source of truth. No, then the life of people could be impacted for factors in the that could be like the interpretation of the rule, how it was implemented, and also the data quality, that is going to derived from this process. And we have the rule of law, that every citizen should have the opportunity to review the products or the process that could potentially affect their rights. And in this process of translating rules in natural language to specifications to information systems, we don't have yet that opportunity. Then translating this to what is going to be the research problem, this study focuses on how organizations adopt and construct institutions in the process of incorporating statutory provisions and institutional practice and their institutional practice in their information system. And I am saying that they construct institutions because if there is not a way to create a direct translation between the rule written in natural language to specification systems, then there is a lot of process, there is a lot of decision-making process there. There is an interpretation of the rule, and that interpretation of the rule in general, should be made transparent to make it should be made transparent, and then lawyers, advocate organizations, or people could analyze them and check if it's a fair translation or not. And that is what happens with other kinds of regulatory products, for example, by rules, directives, manuals, standards. They are there to be analyzed. Probably the process is not made explicit, for arriving there, but even in many cases, for example, with the federal registry, you have the option to check the discussion on that. But this process of discussing the rules implemented in the information system is not possible. Then we can expect that there are some rules, probably those that are in a higher level, that are going to express what is the desired outcome, and some rules that are in a lower level, they are going to be more specific of how these goals have to be actionable and how to be implemented in practice. And in general, there is a problem here of legitimacy, like who is doing this process, what is the base of this action, and precisely this is the focus of this project, that is to identify all the rules in form and also the rules in use that are guiding this process, and from that to identify the legitimacy of the process. And then we have other situations highlighted by literature, besides the fact that it's difficult. Besides that, rules in forms are difficult to translate. Also, the interpretation is context dependent. then when we are stating a rule in an information system, we are fixing meanings, no? Fixing the meaning or fixing an interpretation that could not be, that probably is not considering different factors. Then that is another complexity of translating in specification systems, that there is not a human that has the criteria to know in what extent apply or not apply the rule. Also, well, this is a problem for all rules. It's not necessary that they should be translated in information system. Specifications for information system is that there is a lack of clarity, and that always the phenomenon that they are trying to regulate it's more complex. Then probably there are some circumstances that are implicit, but the person or the group of people that are defining these specifications should consider or should bring to the discussion even when they are not explicit in the law. And also we have another situation that is that I think that it could be that institutional grammar and the ID framework could be could do a great job. Is like it's about to identify the meanings assigned by different stakeholders. Now that in the case of the case study, we can talk about stakeholders that are caseworkers or the voluntary agencies or the people in charge of the control. Then how to combine all these views, and to fix a meaning, or to identify several meanings and apply it to different circumstances where the role could be used. And then also know that we have dispositional rules that could help us also to identify how these roles or mindsets or cultures could affect or not the interpretation of the rule in the way that is going to be embedded and that is going to be incorporated in the information system. Then the research questions that I would like to answer with this research is how are regulatory specifications transformed in information system specifications? What role the organization's stakeholders play in embedding rules into information systems, and how do public employees strategize to use the organization information systems to help comply with institutional goals. Then I am very, very interested in this point view of the stakeholders, and to try to analyze how this mindset, the behaviors in the positions in the process are going to have an impact in the translation process. As for methodology, I would like to explore the grounded theory based on a case study I know that a case study probably is not going to be enough, but it's a starting point. It's going to be a qualitative study. I am planning that the sample unit are going to be the information systems in charge of the New York State Office for Children and Family Services. And the units of analysis are going to be these stories or these examples or these explanations that the interviewees are going to share with me to illustrate this translation process. The sampling, I was thinking to define some like cases where the institution has to make the translation, and from that, like taking like or besides talking about the general process, to talk in a specific, I would like to talk in specific about these specific cases where concrete rules are going to be translated to concrete specifications for the information systems. The participants, at least at the beginning, because it could be much more than this, are the OCFS IT department, the legal department, operations, the CWIS office. I will explain what is CWIS. CWIS office, but it could be other stakeholders also, as I'm going to explain later. I'm going to use the institutional analysis and development framework and institutional grammar. I am selecting as my case study the New York State child welfare system. Even when the problem, I think that this problem is basically in any organization, because every time it's more frequent that organization, public, private, non-profit, are making use of the information systems for compliance But the New York State child welfare system has some peculiarities that I think that are that make this case very suitable. One of that is that I am, from the several things that they are doing with the information system, they have this goal to get in the desirable standards of data quality, and they are working a lot on that. They are relying in their information systems to automatize some of the process. Data quality has, in fact, several levels, from the federal government to the children that are served by the child welfare system. And they are in a process of formulating rules and policies in the information system. And this is because some years ago, all the state governments in the United States should make a decision to adopt or not this so-called CWIS model that requires several aspects in their information systems. And these rules, not even when we can say, okay, this was 2017, these rules are what should be understood as data quality, as data exchanges, as interoperability. They are still in construction at federal level, and later at federal level as a guidance and implemented in state information systems, then it's a good case where I know that there is this, I can see this process of translation. Another thing, interesting thing is that data quality is a mobile target. And with this, I want to say that we still don't know exactly what is data quality. And with all these new directives or manuals or guidelines, the concept is a kind of shaping. And finally, because I very likely to have access to the stakeholders that are in charge of this process, and I know that they have interest to learn more about all these phenomena that are happening in the information systems. But this is a complex problem, because it's not just that the state or the federal level, the federal government are going to release the rules, and later the rules are going to be implemented on information system. Well, that is enough complex, but it's more than that, because besides the fact that the federal government sets some legal standards, are the states who define the policies and manage their systems, but the service, the child welfare system, is at least in the New York State, the services are provided by the counties, and the counties can provide the service by themselves, or they can subcontract volunteer agencies. And the volunteer agencies that are not-profit organizations, they provide the 80% of the services and generate a lot of data. And in a large scale, the quality of the data depends on of these volunteer agencies. And for adding that, there are also external sources of data, for example, the Department of Education, the Department of Health, juvenile justice, the data that other states can provide. And then the definition of data quality doesn't depend only from the state, but still is like created by multiple stakeholders. How do you think that I can use the framework, the IAD framework? Well, it is useful to explain how groups craft effective institutions to cope to policy concerns. Now then, what I'm planning to do, this is an image from Minsey et al. We can see here, I think that I shouldn't be explaining this because you're an expert on this, but okay. We have this action situation, and this action situation, it's shaped in a way for several kind of rules, no, that are boundary, position, choice rules, information rules, aggregation rules, scope rules, and payoff rules. Then it's expected that the behavior of an actor and the decision that is going to be made in an action situation is going to be determined by the margin of action that these rules are going to give that person. Then one key aspect that I need to complete in for for this proposal is to identify what are going to be the action situations. Now, the action situations will be the different moments or circumstances where several stakeholders are going to make the decision of how to implement a rule. No, I should be inside, and you should have access to who are the participants, what is the dynamic in this process. Then I should identify these action situations. I need to identify the rules that are guiding this translation process. I'm not expecting to find a lot of written rules in form that are going to guide this process, as well as the other regulatory process are not very well specified. But anyway, I want to ask if there are some guidelines, some rules, some directives for doing this process, and to identify what is this black box. What are these rules that are shaping the decision making, considering the previous slide. Also, I want to identify what is not safe, and is the margin of freedom that the regulation can give to the different stakeholders that are in this process. And then how they how they complete the puzzle, of the or the activity to implement this process. I want to also to identify the spirit of the process. What are the goals? What the stakeholders understand as the role of the institution, of their own role in this translation process. Probably even the worrisome, that they could have, how they manage the responsibility of this, how they check if the idea that they had or the interpretation that they conclude is really implemented in the information system. And I want to use the framework with the IGRI 2.0, because I could need to decompose the rules, and then I want to decompose these rules by using institutional grammar. I am expecting to find more constitutive elements, and I think that institutional grammar 2.0 it's the best, is very well suited for constitutive elements. And also because I think that this new layer of parsing is going to help me to present the result from different foci, and that I mean, like, from the optic of what is the goal or the desired outcome, and also who should be doing something. Then I want to also to analyze what is the language what is the vocabulary, what is the way in which the vision of the stakeholders is communicated, and check, for example, if for somebody an action is something like a suggestion, or it's a strong command, and etc. No. And then for the data collection, I am planning to conduct a documentary analysis where I am going to collect all the rules informed. This could be the rules that are publicly available, or documents that can be provided by stakeholders. Now, considering that all the information should be public, and I could have access to that information with some restriction.
Martha?
Yes.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
So I guess what I'm understanding of what you're saying is, in this sort of analysis, you're trying to capture to what extent, like, the requirements that are set out in this domain, that are set in government regulations, are translated into sets of directives that basically are processed by computers rather than humans. Is that right?
It's right. I am more interested in the process, no, of doing this, and basically data quality rules is like just the case study, like the way in which that process is materialized. But yes, I am interested in this process where organizations, are basically interpreting the rule and figuring out how they can implement them through the information systems.
Okay, so like, for example, like, there are a whole bunch of decisions that are made in government, by algorithmic decision making, for example. So these computers are basically making the decisions regarding, if this case meets these requirements, then you're making this decision regarding the case. And so that's the rules and code, basically, is the rules that structure the algorithmic decision making.
Right.
And your investigation is focused on trying to understand what guides the decisions about how to structure the code.
Exactly.
And we would expect that, for example, there are different interpretations of the regulation, so that, conceivably, those, if you were to look across organizations that were subject to the same provisions, they would have different rules and code based on variable interpretation of the people that develop those rules within those organizations.
That's right. I am expecting to see aspects that I am expecting to see is like discussions between the operative areas, now that they know better what the social workers want, or the providers of service want, with people from the legal areas, now that that is how things are done so far, but that is not the right way to do it, and later negotiating that with the people in charge of the information system, to know, okay, then you are talking about this specific rule, but this rule is impacting 10 or 15 processes. No, it's not something that we are going to put just in one process, and we need to identify all the processes where this thing happened, and how we are going to implement it.
I see.
Yes, then I think that is much more complicated than to create, let's say that if you have an act, and later you are going to create by law to operationalize that act, you still are counting, even when you need to interview and to work with several stakeholders, you are still counting that there is going to be some criteria there where people can say, okay, this is not going to be this is going to apply to this situation, but not to this other situation. In this case, it has to be like completely, there is not room for discretionality. It is in the norm, is it in the process or not?
That is a very interesting, I'm sorry, I don't mean to distract,
No,
because we don't have too much time left, but I think what you're doing is really interesting in this, and particularly because of the last point that you just made. It's like, you know, many of our studies are focusing on differences between rules in form and rules in use, which is also what your study is about, except the rules in use, which is embodied in rules in code, then actually has no discretion. So it's actually, because computers don't have discretion to choose to follow the algorithm or not. If it's hard-coded in the algorithm, then the computer will always make the decision that's specified in the rule in use, which reflects the interpretation of the implementers of the rules in form.
Right. And also, this is, I think that when there is this translation to specifications for information systems, I would expect that not only the rules in form are going to be embedded there, but also rules in use.
Yeah, right.
Rules that everybody has to do things in that way, even when it's not in a written rule. But it's a good opportunity to standardize the process, if that is considered like a good a good practice. And also, I know that this is still that there is still the concept that of rules in code, but I wonder how much is would be necessary to create a category between rules in form and rules in use, because yes, they are rules in use, but in a way they are formalized in code.
Right.
So there's like a limbo there where it's formalized. The only problem is that we don't have access to that.
Well, in effect, it's like what we would do in agent-based modeling, except in this case, you have real agents. Well, you don't have real agents. You still have computers that are interpreting the algorithm, whereas in agent-based simulation, it is also the computer.
Yes.
So that to me is like an analog.
Right. Yes, then I at the beginning I was thinking to work only with rules in form, but just like thinking a little bit about this, I realized that the more minimum information is going to be in the rules of in use, and how are these traditions, or what is the influence of the position of the stakeholders influencing this decision making in the system. I basically going to finish, but I was what I was thinking to do is to, in a first phase, to code the interview transcript, looking for stories or patterns about the process of converting rules in specification systems, but also in the use of information systems for compliance to regulation, and also in information about success or failure. I would like to capture what has worked for them and what hasn't, different rules or that just different methods that they have used for the translation. I am also thinking to present a description of different themes and mapping the rules, the elements, but are the rules that influence the decision making. And it's very probably that I want to make emphasis in the position rules of the different stakeholders, but that is to be defined. And finally, what I am envisioning, like the final product of this of the dissertation, besides responding, answering the research questions, is how to assemble the different rules in form and rules in use to present an institutional map or institutional process of this translation. Probably in future stages, I could repeat this process with other state governments that are doing the same thing, and to try to check similarities or differences between the solutions or the processes that they have found. And from the practitioner viewpoint, I think that considering that all public administrations they are doing these things in good faith, that is completely what I think, have the possibility to make it more transparent, and also the results that are the specifications for the information systems to put it in a repository for consultation if somebody needs to know what is happening. Well, that is the general idea. Yes. I don't know if you have questions, suggestions.
Dan, I see you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And Martha, really interesting and good presentation. And I had questions about just to clarify and see if I'm understanding this right. So you're looking at if you're going to make if you're considering an action situation, would you consider that action situation that you're studying the translation group, like the group that's translating these regulatory or constitutive statements into information system coding? Is that what you're looking at? Like who's kind of put in charge of making those translations?
Exactly. The action situation is the decision making, and then I know that there are always a lot of stakeholders involved in the process. Then probably they are going to have different motivations, different viewpoints, and the combination of all these viewpoints in a negotiation is going to produce an outcome. But yes, the action situation is every time that this committee, let's say, is going to meet to solve, to find a way to translate a new specification related to data quality into actionable specifications for the information systems.
Okay, cool. So, and I don't know the child welfare system all that well, but do you expect this action situation to be constructed via institutional statements that you gather from the interviews? Is that what you're looking for? Because I can't imagine it's like a written down institutional statements within the child welfare system of these are the people who are going to be in charge of making code. Is that correct? So it's going to be more from the interview process?
Yes, it would be awesome, no, if I could find all this information, no, that is already formalized, well structured, etc. That would facilitate a lot the process, because probably if it's enough formalized and it's comprehensive, I could make another analysis that could be a comparison of the rules in form with the rules in use, no? Then how things should be done, how things are done in reality, and probably arrive with, again, another map, no? But saying, okay, this should be done, but it's not, that is not the way in which the process is it's operating in reality. What they are doing is this other thing. It could be like a slightly different kind of analysis, I think. But I'm not expecting a lot of rules in form that could guide this process.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think the only suggestion I have, because at the end you said you're focusing on position rules mainly, and this is just coming from someone who's doing the kind of same process you are and the same ideas, that maybe also scope rules might be something to look at. You know, I'll let Dr. Siddiqui to chime in too on that, but scope rules to determine like what the outcomes of that action situation could be, if they're if that's kind of there's a set of outcomes that come out of it rather than just position rules. That might be interesting to look at as well.
Right.
I mean, just a suggestion, because if you just narrow it to looking at just position rules, you might miss a lot of interesting things that shape how that translation goes from rules and really the rules in use or form into the rules in code type of situation. So
yeah, and I think like, you know, in terms also, like, it would be really interesting to understand the conditions, because the way, you know, as you think about like read literature on algorithmic decision making, and, you know, read practical accounts of algorithmic decision making, it seems one of the very central issues is the bias that gets baked in in algorithmic decision making. And I think so biases, for example, like who's eligible for benefits, who receives benefits, say in a welfare system. And it seems like if you are hard coding these rules into computationally, right, then you are forced to sort of identify these if-then kinds of directives. And so, you know, if family has this income, or if family resides in this geographic area, or, you know, if previous instance of XYZ, whatever.
Yes, right.
Then execute this decision, right? And so in your case, in addition to kind of doing this rule type coding, to see where the emphasis is in terms of kinds of things that the rules do, it seems it would also be really interesting to understand what are all the conditions that structure the activity. And insofar as like you are looking at process of coming up with those rules in the first place, that might help you address this very interesting kind of question in this field of like, well, what are the biases that we end up incorporating into these algorithms?
Yes, I think that is very, very interesting, and also could help to identify the context, no? The context in which something is applied or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I think that is a good thing that I haven't thought. If there is room in this mapping process in this mapping of the process to identify where biases could be more prompt to happen also.
Yeah, because that's the thing about implementers in this case having discretion in their interpretation is that in casework, fundamentally they're forced to, you know, make decisions about the allocation of benefits and burdens. Basically, this is an entitlement program. And so it's really interesting, like how the implementers are interpreting these things and then, you know, directing as a result. I think what you're doing is really interesting. I look forward to hearing more as your work develops.
Thank you so much. Well, I hope that when I have like something like more tangible and I have collected most of the data, I could have the opportunity to present again.
Of course.
Yes, thank you.
Definitely. We are always welcome. So.
Yep. So we are officially out of time. Thank you, Marta, for your presentation and for everybody for coming and for asking your questions. The next research seminar will be in February. It'll be February 7th. And so the information about the presenter and the topic will be posted soon. So look for that. And until then, hope things go well. And yeah, look out for those IGRI events and check those out and apply for those if you're interested.
Yeah, we'd love to see you in the trainings and at the conference. And what's the other, what are those things going on? So, your PhD students. So if you are a PhD student or you have PhD students, this year we're hosting, last year we did, and Martha and Dan both participated in that, a doctoral student workshop where we just spent a couple of days working with PhD students on around their projects. And this year we're going to be hosting our doctoral student workshop in Javik, Norway, at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. It's a bit of a, well, it's a bit far from where we are. However, since the last year we held the workshop in the United States, we wanted to move to another continent. And next year we'll come to you, Lisandro, in South America, if you'll have us.
It was awesome. I think that if you have the opportunity, Lisandro, you should take it. And Erswa, also, you have had the opportunity. I don't know if you are still in your programs, but it was it was a very rich opportunity to discuss, to bring your questions, and also to hear about questions that you have never put yourself, no, because other students are also bringing their questions. And also it's a great opportunity to know people like Dan. I'm so happy to do it. Thank you.
I second that. It was a great opportunity just to meet people from across the community that are doing completely different research, but with the same kind of focus on institutional grammar. It was really fun and worthwhile. Absolutely.
Yes, me too. I'm learning a lot here, and so nice to see all of us.
Definitely. All right, well, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Martha.